Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 180 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2 for 1 studios, the best place to consume all the content. And if you didn't know, listeners, and let's be honest, you probably did not, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located 4047 Eastkill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas, though they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year. Kapow. Daniel, it's episode 180. And as I was watching Loki episode 2 last night, I thought to myself, oh shit, we were supposed to do episode 1 this week and episode 2 next week. And just the way I had built the schedule and stuff, and I'd forgot about it. But it worked out because now we're talking about Loki episode 1 and 2 in this podcast. And because I had to remember, because I thought we'd already talked about it as I was watching episode 2, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't know Daniel's thoughts on this so far.
And it's good because I think there's more to talk about. I think episode 1,
there is.
Yeah. So we'll get into it.
Yeah. So we can just dive right into it. I think a couple things we can agree on. The MCU has been kind of more missed than hit lately.
Yes.
Right. And so it's been like this more of content versus direction or quality. It's just been like, let's just put things out there.
Yeah.
And, with these crazy budgets and all these other things, and the discourse online has not been great. And it's been the weakest ever on the podcast because it never was weak to begin with on the podcast. And so, I remember watching WandaVision, and then Loki, I believe, was the second or third. It may have been second.
It was third after we had Winter Soldier first. Falcon and Winter Soldier, yeah.
So those first 3, and honestly, but compared to a lot of the Disney Plus shows since then, those are probably 3 of the strongest. And we have issues with all of them, specifically Falcon. But I remember watching Loki, and we were, coming back every week and having lots of mystery and trying to dissect things. And we were talking about, this is before we knew 100% Kane the Conqueror was involved and kind of where we were going with things. And I remember the show not being from my perspective, not being exactly what I was hoping or wanting, but it was still giving me enough to progress the universe. And it felt like the events at the end of Loki had as big as consequences that you could have in the MCU.
Yes.
And so that being said, we've had all these other shows now, and these shows have felt like they have not been connected to the larger events. And we kind of knew season 2 was coming, and we were all hoping that these, we saw the tease of Victor Timely in Ant-Man and the Wasp on Quantumania. And so we knew that Jonathan Majors was going to be involved in the show. And what's your general thoughts so far? We're 2 out of the 6 episodes in. And how are you feeling about Loki season 2?
I'm enjoying myself. I would say that the show is a bit messy, convoluted, I would say, at a story level. I think, to me, what it feels like is that at the end of Loki season 1, because Loki season 1 had a very specific purpose in the universe. Like they were accomplishing something that will have ramifications, at least we think, for the rest of the MCU. And so the story was kind of the point of Loki season 1, right? They got to tell this story. They got to tell the story of He Who Remains and tell the story of them, breaking the timeline and all that kind of stuff. To me, Loki season 2 feels like they did this because of the characters, if that makes sense. The best part of the show, and probably the best part of season 1, is the chemistry between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. They're great together. They just mesh really well. It's funny, it's quick, it's entertaining, and they just are fun to watch on screen together. And so that season 2 still has that, the magic of what that is. To me, though, the story just feels like it's there in order to have this dynamic on screen, if that almost makes sense. Like they're cleaning up these threads, I guess, of season 1, but I can't for one, I don't really know what the stakes are. I mean, like some
The
of the time,
multiverse.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
but it's such a convoluted version of that. Of like,
It's
well,
hard.
what's exactly going to happen, and what is he going to do when he gets there? Like,
Right.
what are we like? I know we're in episode 2 we were stopped the part of like the I was kind of the FCA. What the
TVA.
TVA. Sorry, I've said FCA. I've been watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The Ferengi have the FCA. Sorry. Okay, so the TVA. They had that rogue group that was like just blowing up the timeline threads. But other than that, like, there's just a lot that I just don't quite understand. Like, it just feels convoluted. It just feels like there's a lot of different things going on. None of them all are connecting to me. Even like when Tom Hiddleston, when they found Sylvie, right, in episode 2, and Tom was like, I'm sure I'm the last person you want to see right now. And I was like, why? They didn't like the last moment they had was when she like pushed him through the portal and then killed him. But like, she wasn't mad at him that I got out of that. Like, it was kind of like I like you, I love you, but like, I have to do this. And, I kind of regret doing it, but I feel like I have to. And so I don't know, there's just some weird things going on. And I can't quite get like the pulse of like the story of where it's going and what should we expect from the results of this story? Is it going to have any kind of impact beyond this? I don't know. So I'm enjoying the characters, the story. It's not, I wouldn't say it's boring, but I would say it's just a little hard to follow completely, I guess, for me. Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick on that last thread. I felt that way too with Sylvie and Loki at the end of season 1, but it feels like the writers want us to think that she was more hurt by his decision to not join her.
I guess so.
But I agree with more of your sentiment. To kind of back up, I think, again, we can really talk about season 2 with season 1. So season 1, we were kind of a couple of things figured out, and I kind of rewatched a couple of the first episodes of season 1. So it's like figuring out who the TVA, what the TVA is, figuring out what these other variants of Loki is doing, i.e. Sylvie.
Yes.
And kind of figuring out who is the Oz behind Wizard of Oz in the MCU and what that can kind of, the ramifications of that.
Right.
Season 2 feels like it's interesting because the first thing out of the gate is we get a few wrinkles, right? So Loki is not in a different timeline where Kang has always been ruling. He is in the past of the sacred timeline. So the sacred timeline is still intact at the moment, but he is time skipping between the past and the present. And so the first episode for me was kind of like, they give you a couple nuggets between Renslayer and Kang, which in the comics that's his love interest, basically.
Oh, okay.
And to be fair, Kang's stories in the comics and whatever is some of the most convoluted mess for obvious reasons.
You're dealing with impossible theories of time travel.
Exactly.
Like you can't quite not be convoluted. Like, you almost have to be convoluted to disguise the like nonsense, the non-logicalness of the concept, right?
Right. So, the comics is what it is. But my point is, so it seems like they're kind of pulling on some threads there that he has a love interest, which we can kind of theorize about maybe a little bit later. And it just kind of feels like I'm enjoying the show too. Like, I'm enjoying the interactions and I'm enjoying some of the nuggets we're getting. But it makes me question again, like, you know what? This could have been a 2.5 hour movie where they're stopping, they're learning about this. It could have been just a Kang backstory movie. That's what it could have been.
Yeah.
That Ant-Man wasn't like we maybe hoped or it was. You know what I'm saying? Like, This could have been exploring all those variants we saw at the end of Ant-Man, including Victor Timely, as Loki and them are trying to repair the sacred timeline or whatever.
And maybe it will. I will say that, like,
but there's urgency is gone, even though this first episode is supposed to be frantic and like he's time skipping and the timeline is going now, it still feels like the pacing isn't 100%
No,
there.
I agree. And I think that's part of the disconnect is that like the characters are acting urgent, but it doesn't. The pacing of the show doesn't seem to support that. We're spending a lot of time, and listen, I love Short Round. You know, him in this show is really fun, but at the same time, when they're with him, the plot's really not moving forward. You know what I mean?
They're just fun. It's a fun thing.
It's fun, and it's not and I will say that does work. Like the show has a good aesthetic. It has a fun cast of side characters. I love the other guy who's the I can't think of his name in the show, but he does a lot of voice acting. It's like one of the technician kind of guys. The one, I think it's the guy that like shows him the Infinity Stones in season 1, and then he's there in a couple episodes in season 2. So it's like it's got a fun world, it's got fun characters, it's got a great aesthetic. Art design is really fun still, and it's got a great leading pair that have great chemistry. But it is that feeling of like, it feels like we're spinning our wheels a little bit. It feels like we needed to pad time. It doesn't feel, you know what I mean? Like it feels like we need to take 20 minutes to just accomplish this one thing that actually has nothing to do with the rest of the plot, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like example, episode 2 is catching the Zaniac in the beginning, right?
Right.
And like fun sequence. I love when he cornered him at the end and like
that
there's
was
all
fun.
the Lokis and the shadows.
That was great.
And you're like, oh yeah, that's cool, bringing that kind of side of Loki back into this. But also, I felt like that whole thing could have been accomplished in the first 5-minute cold open. It's like 20 minutes of the first
and then
episode.
How many minutes did it take them to like interrogate him and get the truth out? I mean, it was a long, drawn out.
What is the whole thing? Yeah, and then like and here's the thing too. It's like this could hurt me later. I don't know. I just kind of feel like we're not always casting the best actors in these roles, or the scripts are not supporting the actors' strengths in these roles.
Yeah. There's a few side actors that feel like not at the caliber of
it's that. And also, and I don't, and I might get in trouble for this too, Daniel. I just feel like there's a cool factor that's missing from these characters. And I know part of that is my example would be like Iron Man, one, or let's just say phase 1. I can't think of a single character that didn't, and maybe it's just Hollywood-fied. It's like these people are the most beautiful, they're the most badass versions of a person can be, those kind of things. And I feel like some of the costume choices, it just makes it feels more like She-Hulk, where this is the extreme version, when there's like the Frogman and his stupid outfit.
Right.
But at the same time, you have Iron Man flying around out there. And it's like, this doesn't feel like the same universe in phase 1, where everyone felt like, I don't know, it's like fantasy versus it feels like it's kind of mimicking real life. It's the only place it's mimicking real life is like the people playing the roles. And I think that might be a mistake just because I think it just kind of take away some of the cool factor. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one.
No, I feel that a bit. And I feel like, but I've also felt like that's kind of been a theme of MCU Disney Plus shows, kind of outside of the first 3 shows. You know what I mean? The first 3. And there was some hit and miss acting in Winter Soldier as well, from what I remember. And even in Loki, like it wasn't all perfect, but like WandaVision did feel much more like traditional MCU version of like casting, and just at a different budget level, honestly, is part of what it feels like, is that you just have more budget to hire more well-known actors than getting, like you get in WandaVision had the lady, the mom from that 70s show, you know what I mean? Like they're pulling in like good for small little parts, really, established and well-respected actors.
Sure.
Yeah. It's a thing of like, I'm in, I'm gonna keep watching, and I'm, like I said, it's doing enough of what it does well to keep me interested. Like even just as admiring the performances of the main actors and their chemistry together, that's really fun. You know what I mean? But it is a thing of like, I'm not really invested in the story yet. I want to be. Like I want to be invested in like what is the big finale? Like what's the finish line we're about to be racing towards for the show.
And it feels
And
like the finish line is what we thought the finish line was in season 1.
it might be. Yeah, it might be.
It feels like, oh, the end of this is the timeline completely explodes and we're in
we
the
already thought
multiverse
that
now.
happened.
Exactly. That's kind of the problem.
And that's where it's
here.
getting convoluted of just like.
Now, I do love time travel stuff, and I'm looking forward to kind of closing some loops. So, like, why is Sylvie there at the end?
Sure.
That's kind of the thing, too, is like, she's saying, I don't want to come back. But as soon as, I mean, like, the decision was completely reversed within 30 seconds. And you get like a cool sequence with them going, but then you're fighting those, I guess, rogue TVA agents. And like, let's just kind of go through some beats here. And I guess I'm talking more season or episode 2 here, just because it's fresher.
Yeah,
but,
and more happened, to be honest. Like,
yeah, more did happen, and it's like, so this a couple things that issues. One being, you're seeing all these timelines being pruned, right? And they got some interesting concept here of like, asking the TVA agents who they were outside the timeline.
I like that.
Which was something we talked about a lot in season 1, right? Of like them figuring things out. But then like the emotional impact of all those timelines being pruned again is gone because we're looking at lines on a screen.
It felt so flat. Like when that one actress said, "Those are people." Like you could just tell that was like an attempt to make this moment feel more like feel like more impactful or more serious, but it did not work. It felt very like it's like, why are you having to tell me why I should feel bad about this? That's just kind of that's not good storytelling in a film to me. Like you're telling me, not showing me in a movie.
And I don't abide the emotional change between season 1 to 2 between Mobius and all these guys. Yeah, it's like Mobius is like, we still got to work for the TVA,
but he's doubting things.
He's doubting things, but it just feels small. It's like you get these core cast of characters, and we saw how big the TVA is, and it feels like it just feels small in terms of like who's making decisions in the group, and then how you would do it is it's like an Alderaan kind of situation. You had Princess Leia watch her whole family die.
Yes, right.
And that's not even the best version either. The best version is when you have, we saw the timeline in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. We saw the timeline of where the Illuminati was. Is when you kind of show us those different timelines, and you show them like in the reality, and like the reality is being pruned as they're watching it. And then you're like, oh shit, those characters I cared about a couple moves ago. Yeah, I get it. You have to get back Benedict Cumberbatch and budget, but when you make those kind of decisions narratively, you have people on podcasts talking about how it's not working for them.
Well, and I would say that like outside of maybe those first 3 Disney Plus shows, the theme of like Disney not, in my opinion, misusing the budget for their shows has been consistent to me. I mean, I think you're right. It has this feeling of cheapness where you're not showing what you think you should be showing. And then we have one of the most blatant product placement ads for McDonald's in the middle. And Mobius is like, I didn't know you were bringing us for a good meal. And I was just like,
I kept thinking what this
feels like is like we needed more money, and we needed more money for the show, so McDonald's gave us some money instead of like Disney giving us some money and letting us do it right. Which just to me just feels like at a top level, Disney has their priorities out of whack when it comes to these shows. It's just weird, man.
I just kept thinking every time he mentioned McDonald's or I saw McDonald's, I kept thinking Owen Wilson has to know that he is just regurgitating product placement. Like what's he thinking as an actor when he's saying that? Like this is where my show went a couple of years ago to now where I'm doing McDonald's.
It's hilarious because it feels like the Arrested Development joke. Have you seen that where he's like, man, you can get a drink here at Burger King and you can refill it as many times as you want. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they're doing that. But then you have Ron Howard come over and say, please watch our show. We're running out of money. And so it's on the nose, but it's like that without the like self-awareness of it. It's like this, but we're pretending like it's normal.
Yeah, it's super weird.
It makes the show feel cheaper because it feels like, wow, you guys needed McDonald's money to get this made. Like,
it's
I mean,
wild.
where did all the? I mean, I guess like 90% of the budget's probably going to Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson just because of who they are and how much they charge, maybe. But like,
I don't know.
gosh,
Maybe.
it just feels like
feels
like at a top level, just like the people making budget decisions are not making the correct ones, in my opinion. You know, where it feels like the money is going to the effects and stuff. I'm like, it could have gone to better places and like made the world feel more consistent. Or maybe the idea was too big. Maybe you guys needed to scale back the idea to a budget you actually had to work with.
Well, that's why I think that this would have been a better movie. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Like they could have took that $200 million and condensed the 6 episodes into 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
What was the budget of the show? 200 million?
I'm sure it was 150, 200 million. Like, I mean, like, which is
just feels, man, it just
great,
feels
which is
weird.
crazy.
It's like that's where it really feels like, is someone embezzling money? Like, is someone money laundering through Disney? Because you've seen such lower budgets produce such better stories. And it's just been consistently it's not like, oh, that one show, man, they really did something weird. It's been like every show since maybe Loki season 1 has had this feeling for me.
I mean, to be fair, when you're watching these shows, not is the budget always amazing? No, there's obviously cases where we're like, that doesn't look great. Like a couple moments in She-Hulk or whatever.
Yes.
But you got to remember, most of these things, these people are just walking in front of a green screen the entire time.
Yeah.
And that's 45 minutes, probably 35 to 40 minutes a week for 6 weeks on time. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they got to shoot longer, and which means, I mean, like, it just it totally makes sense. Like, I think I've been saying this for a while, but the last 3 years Disney Plus were kind of like, man, those effects are shit. And I'm like, you know what? They look pretty great for being on TV on your like it's amazing. Like, look at the CW where they spend like $4 million an episode, which is still a lot of money for those for that level of effects, and that you could add all those people's salaries combined. It doesn't equal Tom Hiddleston's salary by himself.
Yes. Well, and I think it just speaks to the, what Bruce said. I don't know if he said it on the pod, but when we were talking with him when we were reviewing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which you can go watch right now. It's a great review, great breakdown of that script. He said, when you feel like things are more content than they are like stories, that's when it really starts being not interesting. And I would say that, like, I know that Bob Iger has come in and said, oh yeah, we're making too much content. We need to focus and make quality over quantity, or something to that effect. But it maybe we just haven't gotten to that part of the effect. big ships take a while to change, but it does feel like another show where they're saying, we need 6 episodes of Loki. Write us a story that fills that. Not, ooh, I've got a great idea for season 2 of Loki. I think it's about 4 episodes. That's perfect. We need to do it just this many because that's the story. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like a story first production. It feels like we need content. We need 6 episodes, at least this many minutes, and we need, to fill this gap in our programming schedule. Do that. Don't no. I don't care if it doesn't work for the script. Make it work. You know what I mean? And that just,
and content that's not necessary.
Yes.
Because, example, there's rumors and reports, I could be wrong, could be talking on my ass, that Secret Invasion is not referenced one time in the Marvels movie coming out in a month. And it's like,
that's coming out in a month? Wow. That is so under the radar for me right
less
now.
than a month, actually. Comes out in like 27 days or something.
And I heard that's like the rumors I've heard is it's like a 90-minute movie, and it's
an
like
hour and 43 with credits, which is short. It's the shortest MCU movie ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and that no one's really excited for it, outside of like your small contingent of Kamala Khan or Miss Marvel fans, which aren't a very big part of the main MCU fan base, I would say.
Well, this is kind of the ultimate test of the Disney Plus experiment, because the idea was that they were going to spin those characters into the movies. This is the first time we're actually getting that. Yeah. And so I think, I mean, we can talk about reports of Daredevil being scrapped with the showrunners and the writers, whether that's completely true or not.
They started over recently?
They just announced like last week or this week that they fired the showrunners and the writers. They're keeping some of the episodes that they've shot and they're reshooting the rest of it. They were only halfway done anyway before the writers and actors strike started, but I think they were like 8 or 9 episodes in. And
so
some of the
18 episodes was the first season?
18 episodes. Yeah, it's 2 seasons across 18 episodes is what the report is now.
Oh, okay. Is that different than wasn't season 1 going to be 18 at one point?
It was supposed to be, but I think now it's like they're splitting it into 2 parts or something like that.
I mean, it somewhat gives me hope, actually, because I would assume up to the point before that, it was just the normal Marvel Disney Plus machine. And so I'm hoping maybe this means they are changing strategies a little bit, at least with that show.
Yeah, again, the writer's strike and the actor strike also hindered plans because like some of that stuff is still in the pipeline. Anyway,
and the actor strike's still going on, you know what I mean?
It still is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of complicated. I'm not sure we know all the ins and outs of that, but I don't think Loki season 2 is a byproduct of Iger's return yet. I think it's like in the intermediate between Chapek and Iger. And that being said, again, I don't want people to feel like we're shitting on everything every week because that's not the case, or at least me. I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. I just, I can just see the cracks a little bit, and
and to be fair, it's their fault. They set expectations with MCU, the Thanos saga. You know what I mean? And I say it's their fault. It's like they knocked it out of the park in round 1, essentially. Round 3, if you want to break it into phases, but like it's impossible not to compare it to that. Who couldn't? If you've seen that, how good it can be. Like, how good superhero stories can be, right? You can tell superhero stories that feel like fables, that feel just like epic and thematic and teaching you like good life lessons and like, you know what I mean? Just like quality storytelling with people in spandex and with superpowers. And I think because that in of itself has a silliness to it, the fact that they were able to accomplish this very serious, very epic story with it is kind of amazing. Is a feat in of itself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it is this thing of just, since then, Marvel has become a lot more similar to a lot of the other versions of superheroes that we've seen, where there's gaps, there's cracks. We're like, okay, I get it, but man, this, and this are really bugging me. And it's hard for me to fully invest or be really fully excited for what's next when it's all just been kind of like this. And listen, I'm excited to get to Kang. You know what I mean? I'm really curious how much he features in this because like his court trial is like this month. You know what I mean? And I guess like my assumption is if Disney have him in the show, like the first shot of this show is a picture of his face as a statue, right? That Disney's pretty confident most of that legal stuff's just going to go away. I would assume. But still, I have convoluted feelings on Jonathan Majors and Kang as a general, but like as a character, he's really fascinating. You know what I mean? And like he is supposed to be the thing that unites the universe again, right? This character is what will bring everyone together and we'll all be on the same team and we're all fighting one thing again. And so I'm ready for more of that. I'm ready for more of like big picture stuff to be happening. I'm ready for them to reference the Titan that's dead in the ocean from Eternals. You know what I mean? I'm I'm ready for these things to come together and for us to finally kind of seeing, okay, where's this all going and how's it going to play out? That part of it, I guess, like makes me excited to watch the rest of the show because I'm like, maybe we'll get some more hints of like what's coming next with Kang and whether it's I guess it's Secret Wars or it's that stuff. But yeah, it's just, but at the same time I'm not nearly as expectant of season 1 where it's like I knew season 1 was going to do big things. I don't, and part of this is like because of how Marvel has treated their property since where nothing feels like it's all in the same world as much. I don't know what the impact of this season is going to be. I mean, I would have thought season 1 of Loki had a much more trackable impact. We're like, man, that's referencing it, and it hasn't. And so I'm kind of at a place like it's this thing like the show hasn't really changed my relationship with the MCU. I was hoping it would be like, reigniting the fire that just is like, oh, I can't get enough. I just want to eat it all up. It hasn't. It could, but I'm not expecting it to. But to be fair, to give this show credit over maybe some of the past shows, it does have good actors and good roles playing with good chemistry. And so like at just a craft level, there's something to enjoy about that. It has nothing to do with being MCU or being Marvel. They're just like, oh, Tom Hiddleston's a great actor, Owen Wilson's a great actor, and they work really well together. And I can watch that for a long time, probably. You know what I mean? I could just keep getting content of that. And like if they turn this into like a serialized TV show, I'd probably watch it. Like a 22, the old style 22 episode per season kind of thing. But at the same time, unfortunately for me, my kind of interest in the MCU as a whole hasn't changed much with this. And I don't see it changing much. And I'm ready for the thing that changes it. I'm ready to get back on the horse. I miss it. I miss the horse.
I miss the horse too. A couple of things real quick. I think we have to be fair and also recognize that season 1 wasn't perfect either.
It wasn't.
So, and like I had issues with that quite a bit too. And the show's called Loki, and it's about, and you can tell they are diving into this. It's about him going from that variant we saw at the beginning or in Endgame to this more heroic figure, which they're clearly calling out even in the interrogation scene.
Right.
Maybe a little too much, but it's about Loki. And so I see the troubles in the writer room. Okay, make this about Loki, but also impact the universe, but don't impact it too much because we got to save it for the Avengers movies because not everyone watches Disney Plus.
Right.
I get the problems with that. I do want to say one interesting thing. That's the last thing I'll say about it is that, and I think I caught this after the episode aired, was that it appears that Short Round or OB need a Kang variant because his Aurora can, I guess, disarm or disable or help them fix the sacred timeline thing. And so it seems like we're going to get him fairly soon.
Yeah.
And they're going to go find the Victor Timely version of him.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to happen. So I'm pretty excited for that.
I'm too.
I think a cool nugget was that the sacred timeline was creating one timeline, but it was more like binding all the timelines into like a fabric strand, like a coil of timelines, which is interesting because it means they're so tightly wound that they basically are one. And
I mean, I have no idea what that means, like practically. Like it's a cool detail, but it's also like, well, what is that? So they're all tightly wound, but they are kind of one timeline when they're that way. But you know what I mean? It's a weird. It's cool. It's like a cool detail, but it also doesn't really mean anything to me, like in a story level. Like I think it means the same thing as that's cool. It sounds cool, but I don't really know what does that change about the idea we already had about it. If it sounds like it functions the same either way.
I think the big thing for me is that I think it's 90% the same before we found the information.
Right.
The big thing is that they were never truly pruning the timelines. They were just almost constricting them to a place where they don't operate anymore.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's
so they weren't like dead. They were just muted.
It's kind of like in my brain, I'm making this right now. It's like having an ice cube. It's like the molecules are frozen.
Okay.
And it's a solid versus it's all spread out and the gas and they're moving.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the analogy I just created. And so I feel
I think
like
you did a better job explaining it in the show.
I may have, but I think the implication is, and this has to be the end of Secret Wars. You could always say there'll be one sacred timeline again, but that can't be the answer. The answer is we have to save everyone on every timeline. That's the answer.
Sure.
To be heroic, right? And so
I would be down for an ending of this phase where they almost like treat this isn't phase phase 4, 5, and 6, treat it like The Empire Strikes Back. They lose, and they, the end of this one is there's only one timeline left, and then kind of the next phases are trying to deal with that. I would actually, there's something interesting about that. To a degree, it also just simplifies the universe a little bit, at least for a little while. I could work I think it's all very interesting, and there's a lot of really interesting possibilities, but I think part of me, is just unsure of it. Like, how's it going to land? Is it all going to work at all? You know what I mean? And so that's part of my kind of emotional distance from it.
Simplicity wise and narratively wise, I want there to be only one timeline. That way I can scrutinize it and keep up with it easily and not have to worry about what's happening or what could happen or whatever. But I think narratively, what has to happen, I think the universe will be rebooted after Secret Wars.
Yeah.
But I think the consensus will be this is the prime timeline that the MCU is operating on, but there are other timelines out there. Sure. Because I feel like, again, because at the end of Doctor Strange, we're getting incursions, which means timelines are smashing into each other.
Right.
And part of the comic run of that is basically like the Illuminati destroying the other universe before it smashes into their own, which is like they're trying to save their universe, but they don't know how to do that without killing the other universe.
That's an interesting choice. I hope that dilemma comes out. Like, that's the kind of like gray storytelling that I think will be great and like add a lot of interestingness to it.
And so again, I think the idea, to be the heroic answer is we have all these timelines operating, but hopefully Kevin Feige will say, all that is still possible, but for the foreseeable future, we're only going to operate on this timeline, and there will be no more variants intervening on this timeline.
Right.
But I don't know if will be the case.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm still excited for Secret Wars. I saw like a headline. Who knows if it's real? That there was some leak or rumor that Toby was going to be headlining it. Yeah. Being a main character in it.
Which makes sense. Great. Like
I love it.
Secret Wars needs to be like the old guard, mixed in with some of the first MCU guard, mixed in with some of the newer MCU guard, led by Toby and Hugh. You might have Deadpool in there. Chris Evans.
You could make a version where they have to destroy the other timelines, but it's like the other variants actually make that choice. Like, it's their heroic choice to sacrifice themselves in order to the greater good, or for the for the whatever.
It's how we're gonna get X-Men. I mean, it's how after Secret Wars will be how they explain X-Men in the new prime timeline.
Right. We'll have mutants now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the universe will be different. I suspect we'll have a new Iron Man. They should reboot all these characters.
Yeah, like a young version of them all. Are we basically I don't know how you do it. You need to do it different, but not just cast the same type of actor in the same age and the same kind of role.
Well, what you do, you just have an Avengers team that's operating with most, like 3 of the 6 team members. And then, like a new Iron Man, new Captain America, new Thor. Yeah. And then you bring in some other mainstay. That's how you do it. I mean, you don't need to tell the origin story again. Right. You can have them in the universe, and you can play with those characters when you have the big team up movies. Right. Or and pay them less and have them pop up into other character stories and make them more eyeballs on them. Yeah. That's the play here. But who knows if they'll do it? Maybe they've smartened up to listen to our podcast.
There's hope.
There is hope. Daniel, how can listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail and let us know what you thought of the first 2 episodes of Loki. I'm sure there's some good nuggets we did miss out. I think it's hard not to talk negative about the MCU right now unless they are knocking it out of the park, and they haven't knocked it out of the park in a while. So it can feel like we're hating on it, but there is a lot of good about this show. There is a lot that works, especially compared to some of the previous MCU Disney Plus shows. This one, I think, is still standing a bit of head and shoulders above a lot of what we've gotten recently. And part of that is just the caliber of the actors. But either way, let us know what you are enjoying or not enjoying about Loki Season 2. bit.ly/2for1mail.
And if you can't support our bit, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/2for1studios. Guys, that's the best place to consume all of our content. We have reviews of all your favorite shows. We have retrospective screenwriting analysis with Dr. Bruce Hutchinson. Hopefully he'll be back relatively soon to talk maybe a classical heist movie. Ooh. And maybe other content. We'll see. I don't know. Depends on how I feel. But anyway, I'm excited for more Mobius and Loki, the adventures of Mobius and Loki. My name is Donovan Thompson.
I am Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.